Chapter 17. The Girl Captive. Before Nancy could reach the bus driver, he hopped aboard his vehicle and took off. She ran even faster, hoping to catch up to him. Fortunately, he had to stop at a red traffic light. He looked very much surprised to see Nancy. Hesitantly, he opened the door and let her climb aboard. "I'm not going to New York on this trip," he said. "Just to another town to pick up some folks at a conference." As the light changed and the bus driver pulled ahead, he said to Nancy, "So the police haven't caught up with you yet. You know," he paused, "I ought to turn you in myself." For a moment, Nancy was taken aback. Then she realized he thought she was the girl who resembled her. She said quickly, "I'm not the person you think I am, but evidently you know the girl who looks like me and is wanted by the police. A lot of other people are trying to find her, including me. She's guilty of several things besides cheating those poor men and women who were stranded after the bus trip." The driver turned his head slightly to take a look at Nancy. "I see now you're a different girl. What else has the other one done?" Nancy told him about the water witch episode on the lake when the boat had almost hit Bess, of the suspicion that the girl had been involved in the theft at the cottage, and the burglary at the jewelry store. Noticing his name on an identification card above the dashboard, Nancy asked, "Mr. Patterson, did the girl ever mention her name to you?" The bus driver said, "Yes, it's Doria Sampler. At least that's what she told me on the first trip she made up here. She came up several times, but I haven't seen her in a long while." Nancy inquired if he could give her any other information which would be helpful in locating Doria. "Not much," Patterson replied. "She did say Sampler was her maiden name, but I noticed she was wearing a wedding ring. I asked her about it, and she admitted having a husband. Let's see. She mentioned his name, but I can't recall what it was." Nancy asked him if the name Michael Welch sounded familiar. The driver shook his head. Next she inquired if it might have been Sam something. "That's it," the driver replied. "Sam Hornsby." Nancy smiled broadly. "You've been a wonderful help. I suppose Doria didn't tell you anything about her husband?" Patterson laughed. "I guess that young woman is a great kidder. She said he was a green man. I asked her what she meant by that, but she just giggled and said, 'Did you ever hear of male witches?'" The driver was sure the girl was joking and said she seemed to be nice enough. When he had heard from the charter bus drivers about her cheating a lot of people, he was amazed. "It's hard to believe," he muttered to himself. Nancy asked, "Do you know where this Sam Hornsby is now?" "No, I don't." The driver said he had no more information. Nancy was delighted with what she had learned and thanked him. "I'll get off now," she told him. By this time they were some distance out of town. He asked in concern, "How are you going to get back to the village?" Nancy had noticed that Ned and the others were following in her car. "I see that my friends are right in back of the bus," she answered, "so I'll get off at the next crossroad." Mr. Patterson wished Nancy luck in her detective work. "I hope you track down this Doria Sampler Hornsby." Then he opened the door. Nancy said goodbye and jumped off. She waved to him as he pulled away. As she stepped into the car, Ned smiled at her and said, "I can tell from your eyes that you had some luck talking to that driver. What did you learn?" Nancy told her surprising news and concluded by saying, "I'd like to go up on the mountain and hunt for the green man." George chanted, "Sam, Sam, the green man, avoid Nancy Drew if you can." The others laughed. Bert added, "And that goes for Doria, too." Ned turned the car around, and they headed back to Cooperstown. Presently, Matt looked at his watch. He informed the others that it was 10 o'clock. "Do you think there'll be any activity up in the woods at this hour?" he asked. Nancy shrugged. "Things happened pretty late the other times we were up there." She wondered if Matt were tired, and this was a diplomatic way of coaxing them all home instead of climbing the mountain. By now they had rounded the curve into East Lake Road. Suddenly their headlights picked up the figure of a young woman on foot scooting up the hillside. "That's Doria!" Nancy exclaimed. "Now's our chance to capture her." As soon as the car stopped and they jumped out, Ned locked it, and the 5 pursuers started after the girl. "This is a long way from where we saw the green man," George remarked. Nancy surmised that Doria was taking a direct line to the place where her husband was hiding. "Could it be the lean-to where I had found the bobby pins?" Nancy asked herself. "But she's heading toward Natty Bumppo's cave. Maybe she's going to hide in there. I guess she knows that our headlights picked her up and she can hear us following her." They reached the cave made famous by James Fenimore Cooper and his leather-stocking tales. Their flashlights revealed no one inside. They hurried on through the woods. Here and there the searchers could see a fresh shoe print and kept on climbing. "She's fast," Bert remarked. "We'd better double our speed or we'll never catch her." There was no more conversation as Nancy and her friends dashed among the trees toward the summit. Nancy took the lead, beaming her flashlight in a great circle. "I see her! I see her! We've caught up!" she cried excitedly. The pursuers ran even faster, and within another half-minute they had surrounded Doria Sampler Hornsby. "What's the meaning of this?" she asked defiantly. "Get lost, all of you!" Nancy and her friends closed in on the girl. When she tried to break away, Matt put a strong hand on her shoulder, but she wiggled loose. "Don't you dare touch me!" she screamed. "Go away! Leave me alone!" Suddenly the captured girl began to fight like a tiger. She used her fingernails as claws and slashed at one, then another of her captors. "Hey!" Bert cried in pain as her nails dug into his arm. Doria's eyes blazed and her face grew red. When anyone came near her, she kicked at him. "All this won't do you any good," said Nancy as Ned wrenched the girl from Bert. "I'm tired of having people accuse me of being a lawbreaker. We're taking you to the sheriff." "You'll do nothing of the sort," Doria cried out. "I can't help it if I look like you, Nancy Drew, but that doesn't make me the guilty person. You can't prove a thing against me." Before Nancy had a chance to answer, George spoke up. "Oh no? How about all those phony hotel reservations you sold to people for a vacation at Cooperstown?" Doria insisted that she had not sold the tickets. She was ignorant of the whole swindle and was just as amazed as the passengers when she learned about it. "Then who did sell the tickets?" Nancy asked. "We understood you were acting as agent." "I won't say another word," Doria replied. Nancy reminded her that she had used the water witch to deliberately run down one of her friends. Doria answered quickly, "I didn't see her. She was underwater." "Is your husband, Sam Hornsby, mixed up in the racket?" Ned inquired. Doria suddenly looked wild-eyed. Instead of making a break for liberty or fighting her captors any more, she sat down on the ground and buried her face in her hands. She began to weep. The onlookers stared at one another. Were her tears genuine, or was Doria putting on an act to gain their sympathy so that they would not turn her over to the police? Matt answered their questioning thoughts. "Don't be misled," he advised. Nancy had not finished interrogating the girl. Now she went and sat alongside her. "I'm sorry everything is such a mess," she said. "Doria, maybe you are innocent. Is your husband the Green Man? I mean, does he use the disguise to scare people away? Tell me why. Things will go easier for you." Doria did not answer, nor did she raise her eyes. There was silence for half a minute, then Matt spoke up. "I think I know the reason why Hornsby puts on those spook acts." All eyes turned to Matt. Everyone waited expectantly for him to explain.